Good afternoon. I'm Adrienne Gilliard here with Sandra Bazan, and we're from the Inclusion Team bringing you this week's Behavior Bites tidbit. So last week we did the ABCs of behavior. This week we're bringing you part 2 of that. So at this point, we've now collected the data, we've figured out the pattern, and we have reviewed the function of the behavior. So now we have to figure out which one of the functions is it, and what strategies and techniques do we apply based on that function. So remember, the functions are either access to something tangible, escape, attention, or sensory, or it could also be a combination of all 4.
That's the fun part.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each one of the functions and give a strategy or a technique that would help with that particular function. So the first one that we're going to do is access to tangibles. And for example, one thing that the child might want is, say, a cookie. And, the cookie is a strong reinforcement for the child, and they may engage in some type of challenging behavior to get that cookie. So while, I just want to make a point that while it's acceptable to reinforce your child's behavior sometimes with, or positive behaviors with certain tangibles, just remember that that is the function of that behavior, so that's what they want. So Sandy, give us a strategy or technique that we can use for access
for access, right? So basically, when I think of access, the first thing I think about is, she wants that, right? So now I have a choice as the adult in the room. Before I even go into that, just really quick, I want everybody to understand that this is a hypothesis. I believe, based on all the data that I've collected over various settings, over various days, over various times of the day, during various activities, right? So I believe, this is my hypothesis, my educated guess, that it's access to this one tangible, because it's always, always, always the blue car, but not just any blue car, the blue car, right? Okay, so now I have a choice as to how am I going to use that. Okay, and so now that I know that it's access to this tangible, that tangible becomes my superpower to get that child to do things that I want him to do, because it's pleasurable to him. He really, or she really, that's what they, have you ever wanted something a lot?
Right, yes.
Right? So imagine being 2, 3, 4, and you don't have the word, you don't have the words, but now you're being offered, okay, if first, and that's how you replace it, right? There's the replacement. You use a if, then, first, then statement, but it has to be effective. And in order for it to be effective, they're gonna need to really want what you're offering. And if what this particular child needs is that particular blue car, and I can use it to leverage what I need him to do, which is, okay, first, clean up the block area, then I will give you, then you can have time with the blue car, right? And so now I'm trying it. This is when you're this is when you're just experimenting to see what sticks. Maybe you're lucky. Maybe that's exactly what it is, and all of a sudden the kid is cleaning up.
Okay.
Right? Maybe. Maybe not. But then you keep on trying a different approach, because that child might be really accustomed to getting what they want because they've tantrumed. And so now, again, going back to previous tidbits, right? Now we're going to use that self-regulation, safe space, gross motor, sensory corner little area in our classroom. And the child can go take a break, breathe it out, because now we have the visuals, but we've already taught those strategies. And then you can give another first then, or when then, when you are ready, Please
Okay.
define what ready means. Again, we have to be explicit in what we are requesting our children. Like, what does ready look like? What does ready sound like? So I always say, let me know when you're ready. Quiet hands, quiet mouth, quiet feet. Just tell me, Miss B, Miss Bazan, I'm ready. And the second I hear, like, I don't even wait for the I'm ready. The second I hear I give attention fast. Because
Okay.
I'm standing there, I'm watching the rest of the class, right? Because tantrums, for the most part, is the seeking of connection, because that's what functions are. They can be one or two, right? But the idea is, I'm going to try whatever it takes for that specific guess of a function. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And I love that you say that you react fast instead of they're already having a difficult time getting
Oh
it
my
out,
gosh.
having a difficult time, expressing it.
Right.
So it's torture to say, well, you know what, I'm not even going to pay any attention until they say the whole statement.
Oh my God. Well, why? Let's
right.
quick.
That's torture.
It's torture, because
It's torture.
you want to praise the thought that they are even going to calm down, right? So, because that just shows that they can self-regulate. And so the second that you hear them go, are you ready? And then they'll say, yes. Okay, good. I can see. Do you need a hug? Come here. Let me get you a hug. All right, but I need you to first, I know you want the car, and I'm going to give you the car. But first, I'm going to need you to clean up those blocks. One of two things is going to happen. He or she is either going to go and clean up the blocks, and you can assist that by saying, come, I'll help you. Or you can be my helper. Hold the bucket. Or point, can you get that blue one? Be specific as to the one that you want that child, and then praise them. I'm talking about make a party when that child decides to even attempt to pick up the block, right? And so the second he cleans up to the expressed expectations. So if you just finished telling him clean up all the blocks, then he has to clean up all the blocks. If you told him, come on, can you help me clean up 5 blocks? That's a whole lot. That's a big difference. So that's a chunk. That's a doable chunk for a kid who's defiant, non-compliant, but wants that tangible, right? And so do you see how you could leverage a tangible, but it has to be immediate reinforcement? So if I said 5 blocks, on the 5th one, I'm already showing him that I'm giving him the blue truck. And you have to keep your word, because if you don't keep if you give them access to that tangible, if you promise it, I mean, you need to keep your word, because the next time you promise it, and if you did it, it's not going to work again. It's not going to work. And these children will call you out. Okay. So that's that. I'm sorry. What the problem is this, that the functions are almost always a combination of things, right? And so it's hard for me to kind of pull them apart, but I hope
Right. Okay. So what you pretty much said was immediate reinforcement.
Yes.
When, then, and first then statements.
Yes.
Okay.
And you want to limit access.
And limit access, and also keep your promise.
And keep your promise. Keep your promise. Keep your promise. Yeah, you want to limit the access, because you want it to remain like the thing that's going to make him change his mind about throwing the block at little Tommy instead of throwing it. Because you could just hold it there and be like, remember what you're working for, or remember, so. And again, I'm not, it's always going to be a combination.
Okay.
But that's how you can use access to replace a non-compliant behavior, or another cry up for attention, or whatever it is. Right.
Okay. All right. All right. So our next one that we'll move to, the next function is escape. And a couple of weeks ago, we talked about escaping the classroom. We talked about elopement, and how sometimes we have children in our care that escape. they elope, they run out of the classroom. And those particular behaviors occur when a learner wants to avoid or escape doing something. For example, if you have a child in your classroom that does not want to complete a puzzle or a puzzle activity or read a book, they may run away from you as a teacher, or they will run out of the room.
Right.
To avoid that instructional activity. And I think I said it one time before, my little one's teacher told me, well, he seems to always get a stomach ache
right before
we do math instruction. I don't know what it is, but he always seems to get a stomach ache. And I was like, okay, so this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So Sandy, what are, we talked about some strategies a couple of weeks ago, but if you could just, quickly just
Really
go
quick.
back through.
So avoidance is easier because you can do a lot of things. And the piece that I would like to talk about here would be self-reflection, right? If a child is avoiding doing a task or doing an activity, first thing you should look at is the environment, the why, right? Like, is my circle time too long? Am I requiring a 3-year-old to sit for 45 minutes to talk about ABC, and then and all of those things are necessary, but I would love to see more social emotional learning during that time, right? Because that you can actually engage, you can actually the kids become interested when you're doing that. So some of the strategies that I would use for avoidant behavior would be self-checking, self-reflection, and being honest. Are my expectations in line with their developmental appropriateness?
Right.
You know what I mean? And so chunking, making a really difficult project easier, because you're gonna make it in small steps. So if it's an art project, then this child gets overwhelmed because there's a lot of different steps, and then they just can't figure it out. So then they leave, right? Because it's overwhelming. They don't like that feeling of not, so they leave. Right. And so nobody likes that feeling. So I understand that. Right. So maybe you provide additional prompts. Maybe you provide a visual. Right. And so that's how you can almost try to figure out what's going to make that activity or that person, that place, that whatever it is that the child is avoiding, have some empathy, change your perspective, see it from that child's side, and then ask yourself, what would make me feel better?
Right.
How can I, if I could not stand, I don't know, if I couldn't, if it was unbearable for me, not that it's true or anything, to be in front of a lot of people and talk, right? If it promotes anxiety, then I'm going to try my best to run out of the room, right? And so I can understand a child who does not want to clean up. It's overwhelming. It's not fair. I love my building. It took me 20 minutes. I had to wait for this center. And now you're telling me I'm not going to clean up, and they run because it's overwhelming. Those emotions are overwhelming, right? And so that's another thing that you could do. Provide extra time. Provide extra time. Maybe they're avoiding it because they feel I don't know,
they're not going to have enough time to complete the puzzle.
Right. Use a visual timer. Use, maybe it's a sensory thing. Maybe it's a combination, and it's too cold, and you notice that the kid shivers and then runs out of the room, or that the child is always holding their ears whenever another student is crying. Right. And you have this data from the ABCs, every time there's somebody screaming, this child runs out the room. What can I do? How would, if that bothered me to that extent, what could I do? Headphones, ask permission, right? So the minute that you start going back to the pyramid, the minute that you start providing individualized supports, that becomes the top tier, that very top of the pyramid, right? The data collection, that's all still second tier. You haven't done anything. You're just investigating,
Right.
And now it could be that, whatever this child needs would be a really great idea for the entire room. And now that becomes part of your global. So now you're still implementing the first. I mean, it depends on how specific and individualized you're going to go, and to what extent you need to adjust and modify and
Right.
accommodate that child. That depends. That's what's going to kind of delineate where you are in the pyramid. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
The next one. I'm sorry. I can talk forever because there's so many examples that come in my brain that I'm like, ooh, and so, but yeah.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. That's all great information. So the next function is attention. And we have those attention seekers that will settle for any kind of attention, whether it is you're scolding them, whether you're giving them praise and cheering and throwing them a party, redirecting them, or if you show disappointment or frustration, that is still attention. So,
yeah. Oh, thank you for mentioning that. Okay. So, I love watching other members of our team provide trainings. I really do, because I always, and it doesn't matter how many times I see even the same person give the same, like there's always another little like nugget, right? So one of the inclusion specialists, Carolina, she said something about, she was training about the caring classrooms. That's your training that you guys do together. She was flying solo, and she says something to the effect of, instead of attention, it's like connection is what they really want.
right.
And for the first time, I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to change my perspective. I keep talking about changing my perspective. Instead of it being annoying, maybe I could look at it like, this child needs my attention.
Mm-hmm.
They need my connection. And they're going to these lengths
To get it.
Right? And so again, that's a really, really high incentive. Because remember, again, it always goes back to the relationships we build, the rapport, right? That caring community, that I want to do anything because I want Ms. B to smile, and I want her to give me that hug that she gives me, because when she tells me I'm proud, it makes me feel good.
Right.
So I can use that incentive. I don't like the way it sounds, like to my advantage, but like I can use that incentive, and it's a positive incentive, right? To kind of mold the behavior and replace the behaviors, because this child, for whatever reason, not for whatever reason, but because those behaviors have worked before to get that child what they wanted, or avoid what they didn't want to do, or it felt good, right? And so so attention is almost like all three of them combined.
Right.
That's what happens, because the child has learned, oh, watch this, I'm going to throw myself on the floor. I bet you I do get that candy. I bet you I do get the cookie.
Right.
Right.
It's worked before.
So, so again, that connection, I'm going to use it to my benefit, because now I'm going to give an expected pro-social behavior that will get my attention. And when I say it's going to get my attention, I'm talking about Miss Bazan's going to lose it in the classroom. I might jump up and down, I mean, the biggest show of like, I am so proud of you. To the point of like, again, but you need to know your kid, because a lot of kids don't want that.
They don't want that. Some of them don't.
Some of them don't. And so if I knew that, I'd probably like wink or high five, or like give them a special something, a special sign between the two of us to reinforce that connection, to make me the reinforcer of the changing of that behavior, because I'm the incentive. Right. And so once I clarify quiet hands, quiet mouth, quiet feet, that's how you're going to let me know. And I will be back. I will be right here. And then I'm within earshot right? And so the second the whimper happens again, do you see how it's almost all cyclical?
It is.
You
It
know what I
is.
mean? So like
Mhm.
you can use it all, and and it's not manipulation. It's literally teaching this child that has been reinforced, whether it was intentional or not, that behavior is no longer acceptable. But if you want my attention, here's how you can get it, right?
Right.
And so again, immediate reinforcement. The second, oh, come here. Do you need a hug? Let's talk about it. Do you want special time with me? Cool. You want to have lunch with me? You want to sit next to me? Absolutely. Can you do me a favor? First, go clean up the blocks, please. And then snack time, you can be my helper. And then when you're done, you sit next to me.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay. Right. And so now you've handled so many different reasons, functions for that behavior, only by changing the lens, the perspective, and realizing it's not attention, it's connection. It's connection. And you know what? That feels kind of good. I don't know.
Does.
Like, I like that he thinks that I'm cool, or that she loves me that much.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? That she wants to spend time with me, because again, it's looking at at the children as individuals, as little people. And I don't know, it's a bond. And again, that bottom pyramid.
That bottom part of the
that bottom
pyramid.
pyramid is
You can't escape it. I mean,
it always goes back to that.
It always goes back to it. It's something that always has to be addressed.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
then the last one is what? There's one more, right?
The last one is sensory stimulation. It's when a child either experiences a pleasant sensation or to replace discomfort, to sensitize or to desensitize if they need to. And it looks different. It can look like hand flapping. It can look like
rolling around on the carpet.
Yes.
It could look like, it could look like bumping into students and furniture.
Right.
It could look like superhuman strength when they come to give you a hug and they squeeze you so hard that you're like, oh my gosh, I can't breathe.
Right.
It could look like chewing on their shirt.
Chewing on their shirt, bouncing the legs up and down.
Oh my gosh, there's so many different ways. And so that's gonna be the hardest one, I think, to kind of figure out. But what I believe worked for me was if I didn't know what the sensory specific was, I made a toolkit, right? And I just put all the good stuff. I'm talking about, what are the senses? Eyes, something nice to look at, and glitter, or something like those oils or whatever. It's fascinating. I could sit there for hours.
You're
myself.
smelly. You're smelly. Yeah, with the chapsticks. I love those.
You like those? You like that one?
Even when you talked about one time, the exercise bands, putting the exercise bands like on the legs of a chair so that they can bounce their leg back and forth against it.
Right. Allowing flexible seating, meaning, if this child prefers to be under the desk, and again, we're talking about that very tippy top, right? But if that's a way to kind of connect with that child and say, okay, you're safe. I will let you go under there to complete it, but can you at least write your name on? Let's first write your name and then you can go under. So that's that first then, right? Because sensory, they want to escape. They don't like I don't know. I don't know. Right. But sensory is one of those things that is difficult and not so much at the same time. Right. So you're thinking about all of your senses. So those are easy. For eyes, like I said, the lava lamps or something like that. Put some glitter in it, you're fine. The smellies for like the smells, right? So the chapsticks, the different flavors, boom, boom, and they're sitting there. Now they're like, but they're attending to what you're saying. They're just comforted, the texture, have swatches of different cloths, have I don't know, different things that they can squeeze, anything that has like just interesting kind of texture to it, Play-Doh, make goop, have them make their own goop, and have it there, maybe put some Febreze in it if they like both. Like smell or gain in it and it smells like laundry. I don't know. But I would, and then if they're old enough, I would definitely have them help me, create the sensory things that they need. Right. So if you have a child who you see is a head bumper when they get really, really mad, right? And that's a serious, like that's serious, right? And they're going to head bump. That's just one of the ways that that's one of their coping mechanisms. Right now we're at the very tippy top. We're talking about why not provide a pillow and teach the child, okay, if you need to do that, here, put the pillow and you can put the pressure there. And then that same pillow can be for your screamer. Listen, and you can say something like, when you're frustrated, I understand that you need to scream, but it disturbs the rest of the class. Here's a pillow. I'm not telling her not to scream. I'm telling her how she can scream, right? So now I'm building trust. And I'm coming to her understanding she needs to scream.
She needs to scream. So here's your opportunity to scream.
This is how it's acceptable in my classroom.
Absolutely.
Right. And so that's one of the ways sensory kind of works, right?
And the push ball.
And then you have your proprioceptives. Like then you have those vestibular kids, those big muscle groups, the kids that are always bouncing around or spinning around or tumbling or bouncing into the walls or just heavy-handed, and everything that they do, they're just so heavy-handed. They don't mean to hurt anybody. They just don't know their own strength, right?
Right.
Or you have the child that's that needs to spin, or you have the child that stems a little bit, right? Like when they get nervous, they kind of like so it's a coping mechanism, right? And so for that, I would put it all in the same area, because let's be real, we don't have that much space. We've got a lot of children with a lot of different activities going on, and
space is limited.
Real estate is limited, right? And so I would make the safe space the same as my sensory seeking corner. So like if I saw that Charlie needed to get his wiggles out, I could go say, hey Charlie, can you do me a favor, go climb go bounce like a monkey, or go hop like a frog 10 times, and I want to hear you counting.
Right.
I want to hear you counting.
I like those ideas.
You know what I mean? And then okay, that didn't work, he needs to slither like a snake. Okay, because the F is the letter of the week, and you just want to incorporate it all into full body movement, so that we're going to learn how to take deep breaths like a snake. What sound does the snake make? So we're going to practice that. How much fun is that? And then if Charlie needs like a moment because he's just rolling around, Charlie, do me a favor, can you go take a break, but I want to see you slither like a snake and breathe like one while you're at it.
Right.
And what did you just teach? That self-regulation is like kind of fun, cool. It doesn't have to be that way, right? And then you can push in and just say, you feel better? You ready to come back? Let me know when you're ready.
Absolutely.
When your body is calm and you're ready to learn, when you're feeling green, remember, because we did the zones, when you're feeling green and not so yellow, not so excitable, let me know. Come back. I'll sit with you. And that's it.
That's it. That's perfect.
And that's it. So it's taking the time to build the relationships, taking the time to change your and the effort to seriously self-reflect and change your perspective on certain behaviors, realizing they're not personal, realizing that all behavior is communication. Realizing that it's the only way that they know how to communicate it at this point. So instead of getting annoyed, let's put on those detective glasses, take the time, take the data, figure out a good hypothesis, and then just experiment with replacing behaviors that are going to be they're going to be the same function as the maladaptive ones. Right. So if it's attention, I'm only going to give you attention when you comply to the way that I need you to get my attention. for that connection, right? If it's, elopement, their avoidance, then either you give extra time with a visual and a timer, or you give them extra warnings, or, like there's so many, you can get
There's so many different
there's
things.
so many. And then Google, honestly.
Right. And, and like you said, and in closing, a lot of times with those functions of behavior, they're a combination of all four of the functions.
Great.
So the strategies and techniques can be a combination of all of them.
Absolutely.
It's just important to figure out, to make those connections, to push in and figure out what combinations to use.
Right. And if it, and then provide consistency every time, not because you're tired and, oh, I don't want to deal with it today. You start all over again. you start the replacement behaviors all over. You have to do it so consistently that the child knows themselves that, oh, I'm not even going to bother because I'm going to end up having to go jump like a monkey 10 times.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sandy,
You're
for
welcome.
all of the strategies, all of the techniques.
I hope it helped. I know it's a lot.
It's a lot, but we have wrapped up part 2 of the ABCs of behavior. Like Sandy said, we hope that we really helped. So thank you again for all that you do for all of our children in the community, and we will see you next time.
See you.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.